go.
Get ready, get set for the best movie and pop culture talk in the universe. It's The Good Brothers on Mercado Airwaves with your hosts, Alex Mercado and Mike Mercado.
Hello, friends, and welcome into another edition of The Good Brothers here on Mercado Airwaves. I'm your host, Mike Mercado, and I am flying the Millennium Falcon solo today as the good brother himself, Alex Mercado, is with the youths getting prepared to go to Worlds for their competitions. So make sure you're sending them all the love, support as they try to do this damn thing safe and sound and bring home some championship gold. But you are here on The Good Brothers. We are your highwaymen between LA and New York City to break down all the news from the pop culture and entertainment world. But before we get to all of the major news, including the Wandavision series finale, we need to take care of some housekeeping notes. Follow us all over the universe. I'm on Twitter at Mike M Media, Instagram, Mike Mercado Media, and the show is on Twitter at Good Brothers Pod. Follow the Good Brother on Twitter at Mercado21Alex and on Instagram at Mercado2121. Like, rate, review, and shares wherever you get your favorite podcast at Mercado Airwaves. Become a producer of the show at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves, the home to our interviews with athletes and celebrities that you could get ad-free and before anybody else. That's patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. We have swag, teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves. Subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/Mercado Airwaves Network. Come play video games with us on Twitch, twitch.tv/Mercado Airwaves. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. And keep up to date with everything we're doing on the podcast network, from the sports show, the true crime show, our sister podcast, the Gone Missing podcast, by following us on Twitter at Mercado Airwaves. Well, friends, we have finally made it to the finish line of this journey that was WandaVision on Disney Plus, and in my opinion, it was a wonderful journey, one that had a lot of twists and turns, some ups, some downs, and gave us a wonderful product. Not everybody felt that way. A lot of people felt that way. We have seen the gambits on opinions, and we have to give you ours here on The Good Brothers. But before we get into any real spoiler territory, especially for those who are going to binge it together, haven't had a chance to watch it because, life, what I'm going to do is the good brother himself, Alex Mercado, and myself, we tweeted out our reviews, non-spoiler reviews of the series and the series finale. So I'll read those off, and then after that, we will go full spoiler mode on what I liked, what I didn't like, and a general idea of the entire series. So we'll start off with my tweet at Mike M Media. I really enjoyed the WandaVision finale and the entire series. I never got lost in the fan theories and just enjoyed the ride. I loved the acting, premise, and sprinkles of horror we got. So many questions for the rest of the MCU while still telling a good story. 8 out of 10. Now this one comes from the good brother Alex Mercado on Twitter at Mercado21Alex. WandaVision finale is proof overhype can hurt a show. The show is fine, but does not live up to that hype. This series is more Jessica Jones level, not Mandalorian. This ended on such a whimper after promising roar. At least we can finally move on. 6 out of 10 season. So those are our general non-spoiler reviews of WandaVision on Disney Plus. I gave it an 8 out of 10. The good brother gave it a 6 out of 10. So now it is time to go into the nitty-gritty of the series. If you haven't finished it, if you haven't watched the series finale, wherever you might be, this is your time to jump out and join us back here on The Good Brothers. And we will start with the big elephant in the room that has been this series. And that is, did the lack of fan fiction coming true, the hypothesis, the guesses, the theories, that some of them did not play out to fruition, did that ruin my experience with the series? Absolutely not. And like I said in my tweet, the part of fandom that's really fun is that. Okay, it is fun to take a guess and have these theories and have fun and try to plan for the future, but you cannot judge the product because they did not go that way. Especially if they don't go that way and they execute well still. You see what I'm saying? You don't have to agree that they made the person go left or right or push the button, not push the button. But if the outcome makes for good television, a good movie, a good story, then it doesn't matter what your theory was, whether it was correct or incorrect. I'll use a sports kind of world. I'll take you into my world over on Sports from the Couch. I can have an opinion on a player, on a stat, on a team, whatever. But if the outcome ends up with them winning a championship, an MVP, my assessment was wrong, and I have to admit that. It doesn't change that, like, at that given moment, I was correct, having fun, whatever the case may be. It's the same thing with these fan theories. And one of the big ones, obviously, is the space engineer. They mention it twice. And as a fan community, we all did this. We did it here on the show. We're like, well, what can it be? Who can it be if it's going to be anybody? And that's the key to that conversation. I mentioned this to the good brother as he was traveling that I never once made a proclamation of this has to be it, or this is going to be it. That it's going to be Reed Richards. That is going to be Dr. Doom. That is going to be Carol Danvers, Shuri. My whole thing was they never told you, hey, this person is doing this. This is an important thing. Wait, it was a line. And because Marvel does a great job of saying like, hey, these things are this, these things are that, pay attention. There's also red herrings. So I really wasn't bothered by that. The Paul Bettany thing, it was funny. It was a haha. It got a little or maybe it got a little out of hand, and like that might have been the biggest one that kind of bummed me out was, oh, that would have been kind of cool had it been this big actor. And I don't even think it should have been like, Al Pacino as Mephisto. But like somebody cool to be in the show to have a scene with, whatever, right? But no harm, no foul. The one that's really upsetting people is the Evan Peters and the Pietro that he was actually just Ralph. And that he made a quote-unquote boner joke. And I get it. But this is something that I came to realize about the show maybe 3-4 episodes in. Yeah, maybe right after we got through the 50s and 60s and 70s stuff. This show is never about the multiverse of madness or about Spider-Man 3. Kevin Feige said it's an arc. The story arc is that, right? But I think a lot of people at some point were just waiting to see Doctor Strange show up. And there could be this ultimate moment where Scarlet Witch snaps her fingers and we're going to see Into the Spider-Verse and we're going to see Ben Grimes from those Jessica Alba Fantastic Four movies and so on and so forth. But this was a story that Kevin Feige and the directors and the creators wanted to tell about Wanda. And I think in their minds, they didn't believe this was a story that would capture the imaginations of people in a movie theater, but in their comfort in their own home. Time to think about it, have a week to talk about it and speculate. Putting more weight in these scenarios because they're sitting and lingering there. Much more effective. And that's why people may be a little bummed out that they didn't get the X-Men, that they didn't get the multiverse being created here. But this is just a chapter in another long story that Marvel's telling us. And when we look back at it, I think you're going to appreciate it more. Now, there is legit criticism for WandaVision, and we can talk about that in just a second. But if your criticism is that you let yourself get overhyped and make your own fan fiction, and because it didn't play out that way, you're blaming the show, even though the show, too many, and of course, art is objective, but it nailed the landing, it was good, it still did the job it was supposed to. My friends, that's on you. And that's us on a community for being like that, for constantly just letting our minds go crazy, and that's what's fun about it. But I didn't think that the lack of fan theories coming true hurt me at all. Because here's another thing too, a lot of fan theories ended up being correct. So I think that's really important to keep in mind as we're judging this and as we have our instant reactions to it. And I made a list and some bullets and points that I want to get into. And we can do what I like first, right? Because a lot of people want to be negative, and we'll get into the criticisms, the constructive criticism of it a little later. But what did I like? The acting. The acting, what else can you say? Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany and Catherine Hahn, and just go down the list. They all killed it. Kat Dennings and Wu. I'm blanking on the actor's name, but Monica was awesome in it. Like, it was once again, Marvel doesn't miss on casting. And I thought the premise was fun. It was lighthearted. It was meta. There was horror. There was drama. You were invested in it. There were lines in there, like in the series finale with Vision and White Vision. And that to me is important. Like, is it Shakespeare? No. Is it Martin Scorsese or Quentin Tarantino? No. But that's the top tier. This is pretty damn good. There are times where you're sitting there thinking and you're retroactively active, in your mind thinking about grief and loss and what you're willing to do. And what happens when you feel threatened. In the case of like Hayward, who ended up just being a dick. But there were moments in this show before we got too deep into the end of it, and when he went full mustache twirling bad guy. Yeah, well, what a man who just saw the entire snap happen and Thanos and these godlike metahumans destroying the world. Yeah, why he would think that way. It was a wonderful script. It was a wonderful story. And to the point of The Good Brother, that it's not Mandalorian, what I think Mandalorian had going for it when it came to the way we view it, we score it, the way we treasure it, is because whether you like it or not, whether you're a fan of it or not, the 50-50-ness of people enjoying the new Star Wars stuff that we be getting during this Disney era, this was the first time where basically universally entire Star Wars generations and fandoms have enjoyed a single product together. That hasn't been the case in the MCU. The MCU, for the most part, everybody just kind of likes, at the very least, with the movies and absolutely loves them. You see, like, nobody hates an MCU movie. They either hate the MCU altogether, but if you're a fan of it, you enjoy the movies, right? For the most part, you don't hear people talk about it the same way, and no hate on the Warner Brothers side, but the way people talk about Justice League and Superman and Wonder Woman, and you see? So I think that him maybe having those standards of coming off of Endgame and all this, I still think it landed, it stuck the landing, but that's just my personal opinion. And we talked about it within the story. This is about Wanda going through loss and grief. And in a world today that we're living in, during COVID, before COVID, post-COVID, grief, loss, the political climate, the social climate, and they were able to kind of harness all those emotions in a family drama, in a family comedy, in a sci-fi show, in a horror show. And they did it so smoothly. And you were able to have moments where you can put yourself in these superhuman moments that really are just mundane situations. Being a father, being a mother, going through loss, something as losing a pet, not feeling that you fit in, being a stranger in your own neighborhood, in your own family. It hits so many levels, and it will be appreciated, and people will be studying the underlying tones and the overt ones for so long. And it was different than other Marvel stuff because we didn't get the happy ending. It didn't go full-blown darkness and like everything is doom and gloom, but we didn't get the happy ending. The kids didn't survive. They didn't combine White Vision and Hex Vision together. We did get a superhero created in Monica, but she wasn't the shining white knight that comes in and saves the entire story. This was Wanda becoming the Scarlet Witch and overcoming her loss, her grief, moving forward. Now, what's fascinating is her moving forward might be what's the next protagonist of movies moving, or antagonist moving forward with the Scarlet Witch, because we hear Catherine Hahn, Agnes say, you will bring in the end of the world. That's how dangerous you are as she's trying to steal her powers. So that's what I could gush about WandaVision. And the way you can see that there was a lot of TLC. So much good will come out from this as a building block. And quite honestly, maybe it is because I know a lot of people are excited about Falcon and Winter Soldier. I've been excited about that too, right? Like a Jason Bourne MCU television show, like the Winter Soldier, Captain America Winter Soldier. But this was the one I was excited for because it seemed to be the most different. And it was. We haven't seen anything like it in the MCU. The amazing movies we've seen from this company, we've never seen anything like this before. And to adapt House of M and some of these tones that we've seen in the legacy of Vision and Wanda, it's really cool. And only Marvel can adapt it in such a way that kind of pays respect to where it comes from and add just a whole new wrinkle and will now become the real mythos of it. Or a new version of the mythos of it. I love it. Really enjoyed what they did for that. But what I didn't like. So, the Evan Peters thing, stunt casting at its best. And you could be mad at first, obviously, because why would you do that? And you can have 1,000 complaints. I get it. But we've heard fans complain all the time of like, hey, why don't you just get Tobey Maguire to do a cameo in the Spider-Man movie as like a pizza delivery guy or whatever? But you would then get mad. Fans we can't have it both ways. And I think that's how people felt with Evan Peters. They're like, well, you brought in the X-Men guy from the Fox movies and you make him say boner and he's a nobody. That's not him, though. And I get it. It's the same actor. But that's not Peter. That's not Quicksilver. That's not the Quicksilver you see, help the kids get away in the mansion or when they try to escape in Magneto's prison. That's not the same character. It's just brilliant casting by Kevin Feige to make us think 1,000 different things. Was it a little annoying or disappointing or like even in the back of my head, I'm like, that would have been kind of cool. Of course, guys, and you're not wrong for thinking that. But it doesn't make the show bad. The one thing that I think is a weakness of this show, a true weakness, is the length of every episode. Every episode could have been another 5-7 minutes longer. Let it breathe a little bit more. Let us kind of soak in that moment, live in this world a little bit longer, be in Westview with them. Everything just kind of seemed very fast. While not rushed, still very fast. There was a pace to it. And there were times that I think it would have been very beneficial for the show to be able to just let us simmer in it. That being said, though, it did leave me wanting more. Another thing in the story that I didn't enjoy, though, or that I didn't like, or that I have some criticism towards, is they did a better job of telling us and explaining to the audience the Vision had to live in the Hex, that he couldn't survive outside of it. And they do a good job of showing us, the Mind Stone and explaining to us the difference between the White Vision and Vision from the Hex. But the children with Speed and Vixen, okay. So when Monica is out of the Hex, right, and they see that her clothes are bulletproof because it's adapting and she was wearing Kevlar and all that, right, or Kevlar, a bulletproof vest, okay. So it's real. She's making things up. So when Monica helps Wanda deliver the 2 kids, are the 2 kids real? One of the best in the community, John Campea, has been making the jokes like, obviously they're not. Vision can't have kids. And, right, like scientifically, he can't have kids. But if Wanda is a creature, it's the Scarlet Witch, this entity that can do what she does, I would think, and the show kind of hints that, and Monica mentions it, she was there for the delivery, that she made them, that they're organic beings, that she created these children. And of course, it'll get hard to get into the nitty gritty, but then we see into the post-credit scene, the second one, that she hears them. Now, is that just her going crazy? Is that the final time she hears them, it just plays it over and over again? Or is she looking in the multiverse? Is this finally where the multiverse is introduced? I'm not sure. But I wish they did a better job if they were going to introduce the idea of going into that Hex, changes things, it adapts things, and it's all real. Well, then that's the case, and Monica was there for the delivery of the twins. Why would the twins kind of dust, if you will? And maybe they will explain that because we hear their voices. But that was another complaint that I had. I wish it was a little bit more plain clearer whether the kids or not were real, whether they were organic beings, and maybe that's how we'll move forward, this dark magic of her creating human life. And maybe that's something Doctor Strange will look into, but really fun. And they did drop the Sorcerer Supreme on us, so saying the Scarlet Witch can be as powerful as the Sorcerer Supreme. So obviously a way to go into the multiverse of madness. But speaking of the twins, I love them in the show. I thought they were cute. I thought they acted their asses off. They portrayed kids having powers for the first time really well. They were vulnerable and really enjoyed them. Catherine Hahn was a star. Paul Bettany was a star. Dottie, not really a thing in the show. Really interesting. That's another kind of criticism is they built her up and Monica does, the whole thing, and so does Catherine Hahn, and for it just to be, and I guess her, after all that, saying like, you've left my daughter in her bedroom this entire time, and, it did kind of hit in its own way, but Dottie not being, a bigger character, that was interesting and so, but let me know your thoughts. What were some of the things you liked in the series and some of the things you didn't like in WandaVision? But we need to take a look at what does this mean moving forward. So we saw the post-credit scenes. We know that Monica is going up into space, whether it's to talk to Talon or talk to Captain Marvel or Nick Fury. We know that she's talking to the Skrull. Okay, and she's got her powers. She's probably going to be in Captain Marvel too. That's the easiest path. So awesome. And I really like her, what she calls Spectrum. Vibe, I don't know what her name is in the MCU, but I think Vibe is from The Flash. But love her character. Excited to see her moving forward. Then we got the second post-credit scene. And it's Elizabeth Olsen in the mountains in her own cabin, and she's drinking tea, and whether that was the projection or we see projection of the Scarlet Witch reading the book. And that's the same book from, I guess, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., except it looks a little different, so that's an interesting retcon by Kevin Feige. But moving forward, is she going to be a protagonist, an antagonist of things moving forward? Is she kind of the catalyst of what the next Avengers thing might be? Having to stop whatever Wanda is going through, maybe stopping Wanda herself. Will she be getting her kids back? I've always been under the impression that these kids were cast not by accident, and they weren't given that time by accident. I've just had this feeling that we're going to see some form of like a Young Avengers down the road. So I think they're going to bring them back. But moving forward, I'm excited for what the MCU is going to bring us. We have this Friday coming off. Nothing's going to be out. And then after that, we get Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which I'm assuming, and you know what happens when you assume, but that's going to tie in a little bit more towards Black Widow, which is obviously a prequel. So when it comes to this specific storyline, I don't know if we're going to be really finding out what Wanda's up to, what the Sorcerer Suprema is up to for a little while. And that's an interesting way to go down for Marvel to kind of set it up, right? That they do it that way. Also, what about White Vision? You know, it's kind of a complaint and also a pro that I liked about the series finale. I love how they wrote him. I love how he was portrayed by Bettany. I love the design. I didn't like that he just dipped. I don't like that we really don't know when he's going to show up, where he's going to show up, because it can be anytime, anywhere. And I think they nailed that character. And it's going to be really, really fun to see how he comes back. I think it's going to be during Doctor Strange 2. We'll see. I mean, the Spider-Man movie to me feels like it's not going to be so MCU heavy because they haven't really been, you know, there's obviously been the ties with Robert Downey Jr. and Stark Tech and whatnot. But what I mean by that is I think Spider-Man 3 is going to finish off this story. Doctor Strange 2 is when the heaviness is really going to come in. So White Vision and Scarlet Witch, I think, are going to come back then. But the future is so fun. For a long time after Endgame, people were wondering, what are they going to do next? How can they get us excited? They've hit the home run. They've hit the jackpot. We've seen the Mecca. And now they're doing it again. They're planting these little seeds. And it's going to grow into this amazing forest for an amazing journey. And we are going to look back and be like, I can't believe that they've been doing this since back then. And I think it would be awesome if it's Scarlet Witch that ends up being kind of the one that is the new Thanos. After everything that happens, that she now is the new main bad guy without even knowing it. Oh, I love this show. I want to know your thoughts. Please let us know. We had a wonderful time discussing it, reviewing it, watching it, whether Alex was really upset about it at times, loving it at some points. I loved the journey. I loved some episodes. I liked some episodes. Some episodes did some amazing things. The commercials during it were a fun little thing that we don't see in this medium. So I suggest, if you haven't seen it, binge the damn thing. I gave it an 8 out of 10. The Good Brother gave it a 6 out of 10. What a wonderful time. Hopefully you enjoyed your time with us as we went through the amazing journey of Disney Plus presenting the MCU's WandaVision. And with that, folks, that'll do it for us on this edition of The Good Brothers here on Mercado Airwaves. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day. Next week, we will have our full review of Coming to America 2. The Good Brother and I, we adore Coming to America, the first one. So I was not going to review it without having him in studio to talk all things Eddie Murphy, Zamunda, and everything in between that amazing first movie and what could be a very fun sequel. So make sure you stay tuned with us for that next week as we discuss and review Coming to America Part 2. But that'll do it for us, guys. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day. Don't forget, you can follow us all over the universe. I'm on Twitter at Mike M Media, Instagram, Mike Mercado Media, and the show is on Twitter at Good Brothers Pod. Follow the Good Brother on Twitter at Mercado21Alex and on Instagram at Mercado2121. Like, rate, review, and shares wherever you get your favorite podcast at Mercado Airwaves. Become a producer of the show at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves, the home to our interviews with athletes and celebrities that you could get ad-free and before anybody else. That's patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. We have swag, teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves. Subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/Mercado Airwaves Network. Come play video games with us on Twitch, twitch.tv/Mercado Airwaves. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves, and keep up to date with everything we're doing on the podcast network, from the sports show, the true crime show, our sister podcast, the Gone Missing podcast, by following us on Twitter at Mercado Airwaves. For the good brother himself, Alex Mercado, I'm the good brother, Mike Mercado. We will see you next time here on the Good Brothers on the Mercado Airwaves Network.
Thanks for joining us here on The Good Brothers, here on Mercado Airwaves.